We, the management, have been so bad at delivering something that even Ghanaians want. And ECG cannot deliver the meter. It's an abdication of responsibility.
We'll bring you details of significant findings and recommendations made by the Auditor General. Top Story is brought to you by Gasem, the Nation Builder, and Vodafone. Together we can. My name is Ernest, Manu. The Auditor General is warning the Electricity Company of Ghana risks not being profitable or viable if immediate steps are not taken to reduce transmission losses. The 2020 audit account identifies theft and high transmission losses for the loss in revenue. More on that shortly, but the ECG in the same report has admitted it bought faulty and not fit for purpose prepaid meters and conductors valued at almost 60 million Ghana cedis. The Auditor General in the 2020 report of public boards, corporations and other institutions is demanding the officer responsible for the procurement be held liable and made to pay the amount if the meters purchased 5 years ago are not deployed. My colleague Elton Brobe has been studying the report and has filed this.
Section 7 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016 requires that a principal spending officer of a covered entity shall ensure the regularity and proper use of money appropriated in that covered entity. But according to the Auditor General, this provision was violated in the Electricity Company of Ghana decision to procure prepayment meters and hard-drawn aluminium bar stranded conductors amounting to 59.1 million Ghana cedis between 2014 and 2016. However, these items were either partially issued or have not been issued at all, but are kept in the stores till date at the time of the audit. The lapse, according to the Auditor General, was as a result of the management failure to issue the old stock before purchasing new meters. It says huge capital investment had been locked up, which could have been used for other pressing needs of the company. The report recommends to management to ensure that the prepayment meters and conductors are issued out to the users, failing which the amount involved should be covered from the officer who engaged in the procurement. The Electricity Company of Ghana, in a response, admitted some technical challenges were identified during the initial stage of installation and as a result could not be used for the intended purpose. Management, according to the report, had before the audit visit constituted a committee to engage the suppliers on the identified technical challenges, and the report is with the board for the next line of action.
So that is my colleague Elton Brobe with a report on the recommendations and findings of the Auditor General specific to the prepaid meters purchased 5 years ago, valued at almost 60 million cedis that were not deployed. My colleague Elton Brobe joins me on the line. Elton, today all of these came up when the Minister in charge of Energy inaugurated the board for the Electricity Company of Ghana. What was his reaction to this specific issue of the meters?
Right, so Ernest, he was not happy with the fact that the Electricity Company of Ghana, if you look at the act establishing the Energy Commission, has given the ECG monopoly in the southern sector of the country. And he's unhappy despite this monopoly. ECG is unable to serve its customers. On the issue of the meters, he indicated that since he became the Energy Minister, he's been inundated with calls on a daily basis. And according to him, every day, he received calls from at least 5 members of parliament requesting for prepaid meters for their constituencies. And on the average, every month, he gets like 30,000 requests for prepaid meters. And he's of the view that if the consumers
Elton, did you say 30,000?
Are ready to pay.
Elton, did you say 30,000 requests?
Yes, he says that on the average, every month, he receives at least 30,000 requests for prepaid meters from members of parliament, from district assemblies, and then Ghanaians as a whole. And he's of the view that if the consumers themselves are ready to pay and they want to buy power through the legal means, they don't want to do illegal connection, but are ready to pay for the power they want to consume, and yet ECG is unable or unwilling to provide them with that service, then it's unfortunate. We can listen to him more on this.
Section 7 of the Public
if nearly 30% of the electricity that is given to you is not accounted for through your sales, then just imagine every 1,200 or every 300 megawatts energy you claim to sell, you cannot account for nearly 100. Then it is the best business model ever, because such a company should never be in profit. Because your internal rate of return, I don't see a business that wants an internal rate of return 30% and would not be and a monopoly like you with an internal rate of 30%, you should be swimming in cash. But what do we find? ECG is always probably in debt. ECG, for the southern part of Ghana, Energy Commission has given you the license and a monopoly. Yet still, 30% of what you sell cannot account. So that mentality that we are ECG because we are a monopoly, whether we lose or not, we'll run back to the government because government doesn't like doing so, and we'll go back to the politicians. That inherent thought means that the politicians should be actively involved.
That's the Energy Minister, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh. Elton Bobe is still with me on the line. Elton, you have been looking at the key findings and recommendations of the Auditor General. Let's start with the issue of significant losses in the transmission. What does the Auditor General say, and what recommendation does he offer?
Right, and so according to the Auditor General, ECG's own 2018-2020 strategic plan specified 4 strategic themes, namely improve network reliability, improve operational efficiency, aggressive system loss reduction, and improve organizational structure. Now, in this same document, the ECG strategic plan, according to the Auditor General, is to reduce system loss to 17.25% by the end of 2020. And this report we are talking about covers the period 2020 fiscal year. Now, according to the Auditor General, at the end of the period that they audited the accounts of ECG, we're talking about 2020, they were unable to meet this particular target. Indeed, at the end of the period, ECG still has 24% of power unaccounted for. It talks about the fact that ECG purchased total power of 10,900 gigawatts from power producing companies and sold 8,251 gigawatts to consumers. ECG lost 2,649, which represents 24% of power purchase for the power producing companies. So system losses, despite creating a revenue protection division and installation of automatic meter reading for the special load tariff customers put in place by management. Now, the loss is 3.3% in excess of ECG's budget. And it goes on to provide the table to identify the losses. Now, the report says that system losses were due, according to the Auditor General, to high transmission losses and electricity theft. ECG, in effect, lost 24.3% of its revenue for the year. And this, according to the Auditor General, could affect the profitability and viability of the company. Now, the advice to management is that they should determine the losses which are due to technical and commercial challenges so as to deploy measures to reduce those losses. Now, there's a response from management, and the ECG management says that they've responded for estimation of technical losses globally across all ECG districts. At the same time, needs a dedicated and well-trained team of personnel, a sort of measuring tools, including PQ analyzer and voltage recording, power flow software that can handle the modeling of both balanced and unbalanced loads, battery meter, and so forth. If you can look at the report, they committed themselves to reduce the losses by 17.5%. By the end of 2020, they were able to, they couldn't meet the target, but they exceeded it, and then currently recording over 24% on a yearly basis.
Elton, I want to thank you. We have a terrible connection to your line, but thank you for bringing us those details. And indeed, if you look at other portions of the Auditor General's report, it also talks about the fact that ECG does not have an audit committee. The board subcommittee of finance performs oversight responsibilities of audit committee functions. We advise management to establish audit committees in accordance with the Public Financial Management Act. And there's also another huge loss recorded here in the Auditor General's report. When you look at point 32 of that report, it says, we noted that electrical materials amounting to 11,581,019 Ghana cedis, 20 pesos, were given out on loan to 8 beneficiary companies. These materials were issued out between 2014 and 2018 without any specific terms of agreement. We advise management to pursue for the returns of these materials, or the parties concerned should be made to pay for the cost of the materials as considered appropriate before the materials become obsolete. And so these are huge and major losses in the Electricity Company of Ghana. Let's go on to the phone lines now and speak to Africa Center for Energy Policy. We have joining us from there, Justice Kojo Yaocha. Thank you very much, sir, for your time here on Top Story. Major losses being exposed by the Auditor General. Are you surprised at this?
Ernest, thank you for having me. I think earlier this year, we did some work on ECG and the losses that they've been experiencing for the past few years now. And I think the Auditor General's report only comes to confirm and speak to the inefficiencies that the company has been experiencing. Essentially, we've allowed ECG not to run as a commercial company.
And did you find this magnitude of loss or worse?
No, it is worrying. It should even be worse by now because this report only covers up to, I think, 2019. So, I mean, last year a lot has happened and a lot has happened this year as well. This year, we know that the losses are growing up to 30% of the business that they do. So it's getting worse by the day. And it's all because we've not allowed the entity to run as a commercial company that is doing business, buying power and selling power. And it gets away with the inefficiencies because the losses are recovered through tariffs. So we who are paying for the power, we are paying for ECG's inefficiencies, and then sometimes government comes in to save them from time to time. So if we continue to allow ECG to run the way it is, we'll only be bleeding fiscally as a country.
Help us understand the worth of 24% of the power produced or purchased, I should say, lost, in transmission. Help us understand the worth of this power that we are losing.
So essentially what this means is that if ECG buys 100 units of power, it is only able to account for about 70% of what it sells. And then it will have to sell back, it will have to give the money back to the people that bought the power from. So always you see that they'll be experiencing a debit. There is always debt that they have to pay, and this debt, because they are not able to recover the losses, it keeps accumulating, and then we begin to hear about energy sector debt. And I mean, even government's own energy sector recovery program estimates that if we don't spend the tide in this debt accumulation, we could be accumulating over $12 billion by 2023, and that's just 2 years away.
And if you look at the losses, I just want you to, put it in very practical terms for us. If you're losing 24% of power to transmission alone, I mean, help us understand how much of this can supply electricity to the country. I mean, how significant is this in real terms?
So that 24% is like 2,600 gigawatts.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that is something that could provide power to some community. But you see, if you want to understand these losses, right, we have to understand it from the fact that the power actually goes to the people. They consume the power, but they don't pay for it. Right? That is what accounts for a large proportion of the losses that ECG faces. So these commercial losses come from power theft, illegal meters that people connect, and then also people being connected but without the knowledge of ECG. And the work that we did earlier this year showed that even ECG employees are complicit in the act. So these days, it is easier to get an illegal meter than to get a normal meter to fix for your home or establishment to get power. So people are consuming the power. It's not like the power just fizzles out into the air. People are consuming the power, but ECG is not able to recover the full amount of the power that it receives from its power producers to be able to pay back to them. So it then counts as losses to them at the end of the day.
Hold the line for me, Mr. Yaocha. We are joined by Kojo Poku, who is also an energy expert. Mr. Poku, I'm grateful for your time here on Top Story. When you look at point 32 of the Auditor General's report, it talks about 11 million worth of electrical materials being given now to 8 beneficiary companies without any specific terms of agreement. How do you react to this? Is this regular? Should this be happening at the Electricity Company of Ghana?
No, it shouldn't be happening. But before we go forward, can I correct something? I had something like 24% losses. Was that the topic before I came on?
Yes, 24% of power purchase from the power producing companies, give loss to system. That's accounting for system losses, according to the Auditor General's report.
Let's correct that. I mean, the losses is 26.63%.
26% and not 24.
It's 26.63%. It's made up of 10% of technical losses and 16.63% of commercial losses. So it's not 24%.
Well, so that's even worse. But the document I'm reading for says 24.
That's the correct figure.
Very well.
26.63. Where 10% is technical losses and 16.63 is commercial losses.
Let's proceed on that. Yes.
Okay, so based on what you asked, none of these are supposed to be happening. And those are some of the reasons that CSOs back the private sector participation in our distribution sector. I think time and time again, we've all come to the conclusion that the distribution sector was a problem. And because it's a problem, and it's very also fundamental to us getting reliable and affordable electricity, that issue of let's take it out of the hands of the Abanya Juma to participation. We had a brief spell of the private sector participation through PDS, and we saw a very huge improvement on the way ECG function and the psyche of the employee and how they respond to faults and how they deal with customers. So yes, for me, we all know these things. These are nothing new, just that it has come out through an Auditor General report, so everybody's basically talking about it. But these are things that have been talked about over the years. And, somebody will say that, the Ghanaians can do it. Why not give it to the Ghanaians? The Ghanaians are the problem. So I don't see when people say that, Ghanaians can do it. If you see some of the things that go on, and you are pointing some out in the Auditor General's report, it's not somebody that came from Nigeria or Cameroon that those things. The Ghanaians employ ECG. And many a time, when a new person come in, and you heard recently about the way they were trying to now put certain things on the new MD. These are things that date back to 2015, which at the time, most of the senior staff in ECG were opposed. So it's something that needs to be dealt with. I mean, the minister who is currently at post has given us the assurances that he's seriously looking at private sector participation at some level in the distribution sector. How quickly we do that, I'm not too sure. But
you think that private sector participation? You think that private sector participation holds the key to addressing some of these issues?
We'll address all the issues. I mean, my brother, there's a lot of things that happens in the government or public sector that can never happen in private sector. It can never happen in private sector. If a private company owns that, some of the things that you read in that report will never happen.
But if we are to adhere to some of the recommendations by the Auditor General, for instance, recommending prosecution for the officer involved in the procurement of the meters and conductors worth 60 million, that would definitely, serve as a deterrent and would help
let me explain a little bit on how that came about. You see, I don't think in terms of the metering, yes, it can be investigated, the officer involved can be held accountable. But it was a procurement that was done. The supplier, when he supplied the meters, they detected that the meters that are supplied did not meet the specification agreed through the procurement. So when the person supplied the meters, he has supplied the meters, but they were not up to the specification ECG wanted. Now, the process thereof, we can now investigate and find out how come it has been there since 2015 to today, which is about 6 years down the line. That issue has not been resolved, and we have saddled with 60 million cities worth of meters that have not been used. But those are things that are systematic, okay? And like I said, procurement processes, when things are ordered, they need to be inspected before they are even dispatched. I mean, I am a partner of a company that orders stuff from Netherlands. I traveled to Rotterdam to inspect the goods before they were shipped. That's private sector, okay? Public sector does things differently. So, that's what I'm saying, that it's something that if things are done well, the systematic problems are checked. Because there's no way a procurement person can supply something, you receive it, and find out that it's not up to spec. You don't receive it. If you realize it wasn't up to spec, you don't receive it. So those are some of the systematic problems.
What will be the responsibility of the board, for instance, when it comes to some of these irregularities?
The board of the company?
Absolutely.
The board of the company really and truly are not executive board. In Ghana, most of the time, we try to make it look like the boards are executive. They are not executive boards. Boards are only reported to. What the company does, they report it to the board. The board will direct the management, who are the executives, to do something. They rather do it or they don't. The board can insist. But, bear in mind, it's something that happened as far back as 2015. And from what I'm hearing, it was being resolved. Then there was a change of government. Okay, in December 2016 and 2017, a new government came in. And that is how that problem has persisted. But boards are really, really handicapped when it comes to some of these day-to-day issues of companies, when you expect that the board chairman does not interfere or board directors don't interfere on the run of a company, because they are really...
Hello, Mr. Bogu?
Yes.
Yes, we lost you briefly. Some
so
10 seconds.
I'm saying that there isn't much a board can do,
Very well.
Because boards are not executives. Boards are just people that give policy direction and recommend certain things to be done. It's up to the executive, who is the managing director of the time.
Mr. Yaucha, do you agree? Mr. Yaucha, do you agree with that position? Today, a board was inaugurated, and the energy minister has tasked them to be looking at some of these, irregularities and issues with the electricity company of Ghana. If indeed they have no power to look at some of these issues, why would they be taxed to do so?
I comment. ECG is not being allowed to become as a commercial entity. If ECG is allowed to run as a commercial entity, then you would expect the board to be very functional, given being able to appoint and fire the CEO, among other things. But that's not what we experience in our system here. So the board, like Udo was saying, has no sure the things that the minister is charging them to do will be able to do it. The real solution to fixing the problems that we have, like Udo mentioned, is to go back to the PSC, the private sector participation process. If there is any private business business owner that would 30% of the year.
Well, Mr. Yaucha, unfortunately, we have a terrible connection to you, but the point is well made. You believe that the solution to this is private sector participation. That is Kojo Yaucha, who is with the Africa Center for Energy Policy. Earlier, you heard the energy expert, Kojo Poko. Let me say that we reached out to the electricity company of Ghana. They have declined comment for now, but we will follow up with them. Once we have a response from them, we'll bring that to you. That's it for Top Story, brought to you by Gassam, the nation builder, and Vodafone. Together we can. Top News Night comes up shortly after this batch of messages.
When I see Africa's future, I see